Good afternoon. My name is Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege to welcome you to our 83rd Nonprofit Empowerment Webinar. And guess what? Happy Nonprofit Day. And we have a special prize that I'm going to talk about when I introduce our subject matter expert. But first, I'd like to introduce our producer, John Largent. He'll tell you how there are two ways that you can share questions and comments. One is through the chat room space in the Q&A box, and another is that we'll bring you on camera towards the end of the show. John, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, if you have a question for either Jim or our guest Diana today, just go ahead and put that in the Q&A section. And if you have any chat comments or things that you would like to share with the rest of the group pertaining to today's webinar, you can put it in the chat box, and we're glad you're here. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to welcome back Diana Hoyt from Phoenix, Arizona. By the way, Diana, how's the Hoyt family doing?
We're great. Whole family's good.
That's a great attitude. I don't think there is a role as a professional or a volunteer in fundraising that Diana has not played. And she has been the Chief Development Officer, is it, for 5 nonprofits in the greater Phoenix region. She's been a business owner. She created something called Matchmakers Funding Software. She's the author of a book called Formula for Fundraising, and we're going to talk about a second. She's just offered her second book. But I like her strength is the case for support. And I asked her, she's probably taught or mentored 500 nonprofit leaders on the case for support. Diana, I'd like to give you a new nickname. You know what it is?
No.
You are the Picasso of the case for support.
Oh,
you are our Picasso.
I love it.
Because it's National Nonprofit Day, Diana was gracious enough. At the end of the show, we're going to show her email address. We're also going to put it on LinkedIn. The first 10 attendees who email their case for support in Word format, Diana has agreed to review it and edit. And I got to tell you, I sure would have done it when I was an executive director. And this is an amazingly generous offer by Diana. So, Diana, I have a lot of questions for you, but if the audience at any time wants some clarification, all they have to do is go into the Q&A box. First of all, John, can you put the cover of her book, her second book? I'm jealous. You're a book ahead of me, Diana. I'm still in the editing format. This is a guidebook. It's called 24 Rules for Raising Even More Money. And tell you what, every book author I know loves to talk about their book. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little about your motivation and what you try to achieve in this book?
Okay, I'd be happy to. When I sat down to do the book, after working with literally hundreds of nonprofits, I really concluded that we are so bombarded with information that it's hard to sometimes filter through it. And we look for bullet points. Just tell me what I need to know. This. And so the 24 rules are really like bullet points, expanded out a little bit. But so it's a short book that gives you that punch of information you need without going on and on and on about theory. I just really wanted to be able to give every nonprofit leader the information they needed in a quick format.
Tell you what, tease us a little. Give us a couple of your 20. What's the first rule?
Oh gosh, I don't remember the first rule, and my book's not right here in front of me. Let me tell you about rules 8 and 9.
Okay, that's your mantra, isn't it?
That's my mantra. Rule 8 is know your numbers, and rule 9 is know your donors.
What do you mean by know your numbers?
There are some analytics that every nonprofit needs to run and understand before they write their case for support and before they write their fundraising plan, because that information should guide them. And it was interesting that this morning I read an article in the Harvard Business Review that talked about big data and how businesses have all this data, but they don't make decisions based upon that data.
Huh.
And I go, what? That's
Yeah.
that's dumb. Nonprofits have data and they need to make decisions based upon that data. And it'll save them so much more time and money, and they'll raise more money. So that's rule number 8. And rule number 9 is, as a result of that, you get to know your donors. You know
And
what
when
they're,
you talk about your donors, what do you really mean? Dig a little deeper.
well, I use a matrix that allows you to kind of start at the top, find out why people give to you, in that top layer. Why do they give to you? What do they give to you? What are their values in terms of that align with your mission? And you work that down as far as you can to be able to understand your donors and their interests. And it's hard work, but the result is.
How do you suggest knowing your donor? Is it through telephone? Is it through email? Is it through in-person visits? Is it through Zoom? What are good ways to really get to know your donor?
Well, I mean, starting with your top donors, you should have a one-on-one discussion, preferably face-to-face. If you can't do that, maybe small groups like a VIP event, or, you can do Zoom meetings because they might want to do that. But the reality is that the more personal you can be is the best. I mean, you and I know that. That's your best getting to know me. If I can sit down with a donor and say, why did you make that $10,000 gift? That answer is going to tell me everything.
And, I always like to leave it to the donor how they want to meet. They want to meet at their office, their home, at the nonprofit. If they want to meet by Zoom, I always try to empower the donor with that choice. They'll let you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you want to give them choices because, like you said, that empowers them and allows them to pick that method of engagement that really resonates with them.
That's a great answer. I'm going to take advantage of you when I have smart colleagues on like you. I always ask this question. Why do you think our nonprofit leaders who in their business and their civic roles are virtually fearless of doing anything, but when it comes to fundraising, they're terrified of asking a gift from someone they know for their favorite nonprofit or cause? They're absolutely terrified. Why do you think that's so?
All of us fear rejection. And talking about money, for some reason, creates the most stress and rejection of anything. And what I try to do is teach people that when you ask for a gift, it's not about you. You're asking them to support something that they value. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking. And so I think that's where we really have to take a look at that is that, and also I blame us.
Mm-hmm.
And by
what
us,
do you mean? I mean, why do you blame us?
Blame the nonprofit people because we don't teach them the fun, fundraising. Yeah. We don't teach them the fun of fundraising.
Give me an elbow on that. I love that. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah. And I think there's ways to do it.
Yeah. And there is nothing like the thrill of bringing home a gift, whether it's for $1,000 or $1 million. Of course, there's a little more of a thrill for $1 million. But once you've been in the business, it feels good. And also, you're not taking anything away from the donor. You're given them a chance to feel good about themselves.
Right. And about their place in the world.
Yeah. And their help is sure needed. Okay. Yeah. I called you the Picasso of the case with support. So now we're going to pivot to the case with support. Why don't we start from square one? what is a case for support and what isn't it? What is it? What isn't it?
Well, what it is it is a written document that presents the compelling reason why anyone should give to you. And that's really what it is. It's the why of that fundraising. And, you know, and it's not about dollars, by the way. The why is not, we need $2 million. The why is, we have 1,000 families living on the streets or living in their cars, and we need to provide shelter so that they have a better life, that they are more confident being employed, that our streets are safer. So it's the why. It's not about the money. The money's toward the end, but you've got to tell somebody why it's important.
Right. Great answer. Our audience includes really a learning community of nonprofit CEOs, directors of development, board members, donors, volunteers. So my question is, every nonprofit is driven by passion. And no doubt our learning community has passion for either they're a professional or they're a volunteer. And my question is, how do you bring out passion in a case for support?
How?
Yeah.
Often it's just simply telling a story. You know,
Hey, will you talk a little more about that? We hear so much about the power of storytelling.
well, and it's got to be a story you could do in just a few minutes. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think one. There was an organization I worked with that we were working on their case for support. And their case started off something like, can you imagine being a child who's never seen a book, never had a newspaper in their home, and you are sent off to school?
What a great hook. The hook is called, you know, your first part, it gets their attention. You slap them right in the face. I love that open.
Yeah. There's another one that I use sometimes. I worked for an organization that did a lot of literacy, and they had a class they were doing a program at the school, and they handed out free books to all the kids. So your case could start off that we gave free books to every child. And one of the mothers came up to us and said, can I have a book? I've never owned a book.
You know who's so passionate about giving out books? She just got a Carnegie Medal of philanthropy. Dolly Parton's foundation has distributed something, I don't know, close to 1 million books to underserved kids.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, for you and me, I mean, I look at this scene behind you with all the books. We're used to having books.
Yeah.
I get rid of books because I can't keep them all. I mean,
I know we get them on Kindle now.
Okay. Well, I like to hold a book in my hot little hands.
Okay.
But
I wish the type was bigger. I wish the font was bigger.
But the reality is that not everybody has ever held a book or owned a book. And so, you know, it's what you have to do is you have to get your point across.
That's a striking thought. Okay, let's say we have some people in the audience, they have Picasso on the other end here. And what do you recommend? No, they're guilty. They don't have a case for support. How should they get started, and what existing resources can they call upon?
I mean, I'm sure lots of things online. I have to be really honest. I don't go online to check some of that, but I do know there are sample cases for support. I have taken the concept of the case for support and kind of boiled it down to 4 sections because of the fact
we're gonna get to that question in about 5 minutes.
But I think that's where people are afraid to start because they think it's going to be overwhelming.
Nothing's scarier, by the way, than a blank page.
Oh, I know. You and I both know, having written books, but you've got to start. And I think sometimes it's knowing that you can break it down into chunks and something that you may be coming up later, but it's not that long. I mean, cases for support have been written on one page.
Wow.
I
You
mean-
want to know? Sometimes the shorter case for support is much more effective than the longer one,
Right.
because nobody wants to read War and Peace, do they?
Well, and that's why I recommend 3 to 5 pages.
Yeah.
Maybe 7, maybe. But because of what you just said, people don't read. We know people don't read. They scan. So you've got to make it short. You have to make it to the point. I love to include a graph or a picture, quotes that are meaningful to the subject. So there are ways to make it attractive, and not make it cumbersome.
Okay, we're talking about the what. Now, say you don't have a case for support. Who should you charge in the nonprofit to work on the initial draft?
The initial draft must be done by the Chief Development Officer,
How come?
because they understand, you hope, the broadest picture of the organization. Because they're out raising money, they need
Yeah.
to know all the aspects of the organization. Now, sometimes that Chief Development Officer is the Executive Director.
Mhm.
So it's either going to be the Chief Development Officer or the Executive Director, but those are the two people. That's their job.
Okay, they're the director of development or executive director does the initial draft. And by the way, I got a question from Margie Helsheim. Can a case support be digital?
Yes,
I think it should be in several formats, right?
right. Well, and it's, if you want to be able to send it to people by email, then make it digital. I like to have a print copy, but I'm old fashioned because if
Yeah.
I'm meeting with a donor, I want to hand it to them.
Yeah.
Because that's a lead. I also, the thing about writing a case is once you write it, you can pull information from it for
my-
other things.
There are so many applications once you have it done. I mean, we'll get to that later questions. I think there's 1,000 ways. It's kind of the basic building block of your fundraising program, and so many other components can draw upon your case for support.
Right. Yeah, you're going to use your case. If you write a grant, you're going to use your case to write a special appeal, your Giving Tuesday, your year-end appeal, whatever you are doing should be embodied within that case for support.
Mhm.
Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Okay, we're talking about the director of development or executive director doing the initial draft. Who should be involved in the review, editing, and approval processes?
Well, I think if you're obviously, if part of your case has to do with a particular program or service, you want to talk to the staff that's delivering that program or service so that you have a clear understanding of it.
Yeah.
If it's a new initiative, who is involved in that
Yeah.
new initiative that you're raising money for? I think, and so involving those people so that you have a clear understanding as the writer, and they also feel that their thoughts were included. And
Yeah.
that's really important. Once you have a draft that you think is pretty solid, your executive director needs to approve it, and then it needs to go to the board of directors.
How much input do you want to give the board? Because do you want the board to rewrite it? I mean, where's that balance? The board reviews it, but you're not stuck in the twilight zone of rewriting it and rewriting it.
I've never had a board with pushback. The only time I did was they wanted it, rather than to be a 1-year case for support, they wanted it to be a 3-year case for support. with a review at the end of each year and expand it out. So it became almost like a rolling strategic plan.
Yeah.
But it was the case for support. And I think normally they're just kind of in awe that somebody did it. So I unless you have a board that is allowed to nitpick, hope I don't have too many board members here, but that, the board needs to approve it. Once it's all said and
You
done.
didn't say write it, approve it, right?
Approve it, because they are part of your messengers that go out into the community, and you want all of them on the same page with what the organization is doing.
And can I add, I don't think perfection is not possible. You could go on and edit it for months. But, having a case of support out of there that, again, has gone through the review of the executive director, the program people on the board, you should be in shape. And, it's better to have a less than perfect case for support in the hands of donor prospects than to be spent a year or two changing colons and semicolons and all that stuff.
The reality is, Jim, and you and I know this because we both write a lot, is that, I've looked at case for supports that I've written maybe 12 months ago and got, I would have changed that. But we all do that when we write.
Yeah.
And it was nothing glaring, that something was like, you tend to always want to tweak. Well, there's a point that you have, like you said, you have to stop and go use it to raise money. Because that's what it's
about. And ultimately, donors will let you know if it's a good case for support or not.
Yes.
Okay, you got to this in the beginning. If they don't start reading it and they're not hooked at the beginning, I don't care how good the rest of it is. The lead has to be so strong. So what are your suggestions on grabbing the reader's attention right from the beginning?
It's telling that story. And being able to do it in a very short paragraph, or give them a startling statistic. I don't like to use a lot of statistics in a case because people don't remember them. But if, there's something that in your services or in your field of endeavor, that's just like, whoa, I didn't know that. Put that right up front. And so I think it's getting somebody's attention. I've also seen, and it could be a piece of research. I've seen quotes used that were very pointed, set a tone for the case for support. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah. Okay, what are the pros and cons of repeating main points in a case for support?
I don't like to do that, Jim. And the reason I don't, well, because it's a short document. And if I keep repeating myself, my document's just going to get longer. So, it's you really want to wordsmith it so that every word counts. So, and then you don't need to repeat it. And the fact that it is broken out in these 4 sections that we'll talk about later, that there really isn't a lot of room for replication.
I think it was Winston Churchill who said, if I had a couple more days, I would have written a short speech. It's harder to write short than write long.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, now here's the fun part. Okay, you've written the case of support, you've run it by the executive director, the board, you've done some testing. Let's talk about the different applications of the case of support.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, everything that you are going to do for that fundraising year, or if you've written a case for a special project, everything involved with that special project. And that special project could be that you're starting a brand new program. It could be that the organization needs to buy a new van to transport seniors. It could be a capital campaign or an endowment campaign. They could each have their own case for support. But core of that information is what you are going to use when you write something else.
You
So
know, and
you're not going to
you
keep
can borrow
rewriting.
that text so much for so many proposals and letters and emails. I mean, it becomes like the richest library in your toolkit.
Right. And that's why you have to write it every year. Because if you aren't rewriting it every year, you're going to be sending out the same information year after year.
And when you talk about rewriting, does that mean a complete overhaul? Does that mean tweaking? What do you mean by rewriting it every year?
Mainly it's tweaking, and partially because the first section, unless something has happened, the organization's received an award or whatever, that first section pretty much doesn't get changed much. Second section, you may be adding a little bit to it. Third section is going to be a complete rewrite, because that's where you're talking about why you're raising money that year. And then the last section is your action plan for raising that money. So again, that should change.
And let's talk about the rewrite. Should it be basically the same players, the director of development, the executive director, program people who deliver services, and the board ultimately should review the updated document and approve it?
Yes. Yep. Nothing changes. You know, one group that I did not mention that, and again, it depends a lot upon the organization, but if you have volunteers outside of your board who maybe are somehow involved in delivery of service, it's always good to hear their perspective. You know, because you may get a different concept or an idea, or they're going to tell you a story as a volunteer, what they experienced. And that's rich material for writing.
And, you know, I always say you can get two gifts, time and money. And as you get older, not that we would know about that, you actually realize that time's the more precious gift. Money can be replaced. Time can never be replaced.
Yeah. So, when you're writing your case, you really want to consider all the stakeholders that are involved.
Yeah. Well, by the way, John, do we have any questions in the Q&A box? Or has Diana done too good of a job? And any questions from the audience? Diana, your pace is perfect. We're right on. In fact, we're ahead of schedule. So, but anybody or something in the Q&A box, anything, and then we're going to tell you. Remember, the first 10 attendees to email Diana. We're going to put her email address up, not her phone number, but email address up on the screen at the end of the webinar. We'll also put it on our LinkedIn summary. She will review and edit. You're going to have the best person there is, I know, on the planet on case for support, and they're going to make yours better. What a deal. But any questions out there in the audience? Okay, Diana, you're doing too good of a job, but I'm not surprised at that at all. Give us now, you mentioned before, give us the guidelines on length and presentation format. Let's get practical.
Okay. There are...
Oh, let's stop for a second. Margie was saying, I think she's a little mixed up. She was saying, so the case for support's a paragraph. You're saying probably the opening lead is a paragraph to get their suggestion, but the case for support, you're now going to talk about, you know, what size and what format do you recommend?
You know, it's a Word document that you first want to write, whether you have it to be as a digital so you can send it out to people, but you're going to have a document. And you can take that document and then you can make it pretty. You can make it a brochure. A friend of mine just did a case for support and had lots of pictures, but it was a brochure that she could send to her donors. Or
email to her donors. Right?
Or email to a donor. Some brochures get a little wonky when you try to email them. At least that's my experience. But you have that option to be able to do it. So it really does lend itself to lots of formats. There's no magic way to do it. I think
Talk about length again. Let's get practical.
About what?
Length, number of pages.
Okay, number of pages, 3 to 5.
And tell us, when do you know you're finished in 3 pages? When do you know you need 5 pages? Because once you're tempted for 5 pages, you might be tempted for 6 or 7. How do you know you're complete?
Well, you're complete if you dealt with the 4 main areas. If you haven't done those, then you're not done.
I'll tell you what, let's take a little time. I have that question coming up to talk about the 4 major sections and spend a little time. We're doing well on our pace here, but
Okay.
explain Diana's formula, because I love it, for writing a case for support.
I see 4 sections. The first section is the introduction of the organization. That needs to be kept to about a half a page, 3/4 of a page. It is a brief history of the organization. You're going to tell that story or quote. You're going to state the organization's mission. If you've had any accomplishments, since over the last 5 years, we have served 7,000 families. Over the last 3 years, we've adopted 348,000 dogs. Whatever it is, if you have an accomplishment, if you've received an award, this is kind of the bragging section. This is who we are,
But you brag with facts, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And why are you unique? There are lots of organizations that kind of have the same mission. What makes you stand out?
Yeah.
And so, but again, you want to keep it brief. And for a lot of people, this first section is the hardest to keep brief. I mean, I worked for an organization that was 60 years old. And to be able to summarize that in a few paragraphs, because of what it had meant to the community, is really difficult.
Yeah. Well, as a practitioner, tell me how I deal with this. I would write the case for support, and then I present it to the executive director, the CEO, and the board. And the first thing they'll say, it has to be short. And then they come back, but put this in, put this in, put this in. It has to be short, but then they gave me like 3 more pages to put in.
You're going to have to make the case for why the case has to be short. And I know that's hard, and I think one of the main things is because you need to explain to the board that, yeah, that's really great information, but our readers won't read it. We want to keep it short so that they understand what we're really trying to accomplish this year.
And Diana, I don't think there's anything as perfection, and particularly since you're going to rewrite it and update it annually, it's better to get something out of there than keep on taking time to look for perfection. Perfection does not exist.
Right. Most board members really are not writers themselves. And so like I said earlier, I don't think you get a lot of pushback. But you need to take what they say seriously and under consideration. And there may be a way to summarize it so that it doesn't add a lot of length to the case for support.
Yeah.
But that's your introduction. It's not everybody will know who you are. And so you have that moment to brag and to say your mission and what you're going to do. The second section, and again, this is because a lot of people reading it may not have a full understanding of your organization, is you need to talk about your current programs and activities. What do you do? Not who you are, but what do you do?
Yeah.
And who do you serve? Do you serve a small area of the community? Do you serve a county? Do you serve a state? Do you serve a region? Are you international? And so you need to let the reader know that. And so, and besides the geographic area that you serve, who do you serve? You know,
Yeah.
do you serve teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17? Or do you serve preschool? Do you serve only seniors who are over 70? So being very clear about the programs and services you deliver, who you deliver them to, and in what geographical area you deliver them. And so, and that can be challenging again, to keep that down to a small space.
Yeah.
Bullet points are wonderful. But number one, they're easy to read. People love bullet points.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can shorten the amount of reading that you need to have. But that's your second section that is really critical. I worked for an organization that we did a wide swath of programs, and it was very difficult to reduce that down to a page and a half.
Well, you know, Diana, there are 1.5 million nonprofits in the country.
Right.
And it's not easy being a donor because you're not choosing between the good, the bad. You're choosing between the good and the good. And so I always think you've got to say, what can you say your case for support that all those good other organizations can't? What can you say that's distinctive?
Right. Well, and you can bring that out within a program that we provide. That we provide this particular program, and we do this within it, that you can get that point across about what's really important to the services that you provide. You know, what makes your program special. So that, and again, people want to know very clearly what you do, who you serve, and where you're serving. The third section, and this is, to me so far, we've done history, the introduction, we've done what we're currently doing. Those are pretty cut and dry. Those are things that they're right there. You've been doing.
And they've already happened through history, so to speak.
Right. The third section is where it gets challenging.
Yeah. How come?
This is your vision. This is your vision.
Yeah.
What problem or problems do you plan to solve? What problem is out there in your community that's not being met? And how are you going to meet it? And that's tougher. You know, I can say, well, there are veterans living on the streets who need dental care. Well, how many veterans are living on the streets who need dental care? You know, I need more information. And why aren't they getting dental care at the VA or someplace else? So, but you really have to clearly define that problem that your organization plans on solving, and why are you the organization that should be solving that problem?
Yeah.
Why not somebody else? Why are you uniquely qualified to do that? You know, I worked for a behavioral health organization, and we were uniquely qualified because we were the only nonprofit within the community that had EMTs in an ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
So we could go out and pick up someone who had drug overdose, or there was a fear of drug overdose, and have an EMT who could deal with that. Most of the nonprofits who dealt with people who were drug addicts didn't have that capability.
Yeah.
And so that made us very unique as an organization. And so you need to discuss what the problem is, why you are uniquely capable of being able to solve that problem, or maybe because there aren't enough services. There may be other organizations doing it, but there aren't enough. And you need to make that case. And this is sometimes hard for nonprofits to explain. But how is solving that problem or meeting that unmet need going to benefit not only the recipients, how is it going to change their lives? How is it going to impact the community? And how is it going to impact the donor? What a difference is it going to make?
Talk a little more about that. What does that mean, how it impacts the donor?
Well, and sometimes it's, it's as simple as saying that if we are able to, trying to think of a good example. Well, meet the needs of veterans living on the streets who need dental care. Well, if
that's getting specific.
Yeah, so we know that there are
in the greater Phoenix area.
Right. There's a lot of veterans living on the street in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
But we also know that dental care is critical for overall health. Yeah. And poor dental care leads to more heart attacks, which a lot of people don't know.
I did not know that.
Yes.
When you're brushing your teeth tonight, remember that.
Well, not only that, but flossing is very important to preventing a heart attack.
I use a water pick, so I hope I can get away with that.
Whatever. But by helping these people, we have overall improved their health. Well, if your health is improved, you're more capable of being able to get a job and supporting yourself and getting off the street. There's always a line that if you just follow it. And so we know that good dental health leads to better overall health, leads to people being more mentally sound, leads to them being able to become independent. That impacts the donor because their monies can go elsewhere because those people are now independently working and living. And the community is better off. And we don't have as many homeless people on the street. I mean, so there are ways to connect it that make sense. You don't have to throw in the heart attacks. But I learned that from a speech I gave. Okay,
but that will make me feel better tonight when I brush my teeth. Thank you. Okay, we talked about the director of development is going to develop the first draft, and then the CEO or executive director is going to review it. And then it's going to be taken to the board of directors to basically give it their blessing. How long of a process is this? 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? How long do you see this process?
I like to see it done in 6 weeks. So, and because you need your case for support, so you can write your fundraising plan. And if your fiscal year starts January 1, okay? So you need to back that up and say, I've got to get this case approved by the end of October so that I can write my fundraising plan in November. So it's ready to go by January 1, which means, by the way, you should be writing your case for support pretty soon.
And by the way,
for next year,
send it. You can email it to Diana, and you'll have the best person on the planet to review and edit it. And that's our special Nonprofit Day prize. And thanks to Diana's graces.
Yeah.
Are there any questions in the audience? I see one in the Q&A box. John,
hi,
do you
Jim.
see a question?
Yes. Any suggestions on writing a planned giving case for support, including the organization's core mission points?
The format is always going to be the same. And I think when you get into that third section, the vision for the future, I think it's helping people understand that what planned gifts do. And that legacy, I mean, we know it benefits the donor because they're leaving that legacy. And so that becomes really, really important. Also, with planned gifts, and I just went brain dead.
But I would say typically a donor can give 7 to 10 times as much from their estate. And they're really not getting a planned gift, so they have a planned gift. It gives them more money to fuel their passion for your vision and your mission.
Yeah. Well, and I think that people, by understanding that planned gifts help assure that that organization and the mission continue on and through the years, which is why universities do it so much. I would love to see smaller organizations do more planned gifts. So writing a case for support now and being able to, I think for a donor to understand the value of that gift of assets into the future is really, really important.
Yeah. And building an endowment.
Right. I want to get to the fourth point, though. I haven't done my fourth
Go
point.
ahead. Yeah,
That's
how do you
okay.
wrap it up?
So we've got an introduction, we have current programs and activities, and we have a vision for the future. This is the unmet need. This is what we're going to do to meet it. The last step is how you're going to do that. You know, do you need to go buy an ambulance? Do you need to build a building? Do you need to hire a therapist? Do you need to renovate a room?
It's really saying what you're going to do with the donor's money.
And how much money you need to raise, and how the donor can participate. Okay. It's always interesting when I read a case for support to anyone who's going to send me one, and I get to the end and I don't have a clue how I can help them.
And you can help usually by both time and money.
Right. But it's got to be in there, because that whatever you're going to do might need money. It might just need volunteers. You know, you're making a case for in doing something with volunteers, or you need other resources.
Okay, I see a question from Carol Patterson. How many initial copies? And John, can you put the question up again? I just lost it. How many initial copies? Can you put the question back on the screen, John?
Yeah, the question is how many copies, initial copies, and how much should you plan on spending? Should you mail out or just deliver person to person?
Diana and I have a deal. If it's an easy question, I'll take it. If it's a tough question, she'll take it. Diana's, this is yours. How many copies? How much should you plan on spending?
Well, I think it depends upon the format. Okay. If you are printing a brochure, you know, printing costs are so outrageous that I would not print more than you really think you need. Just to be real honest. And if you can do it in-house, I would do that. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be clean. It has to look nice. It doesn't need a fancy cover or heavy stock. If you're going to mail them out to a large number of people, you have to figure out what that number is. I don't know why, but the number 500 comes to mind, but I don't know your organization or what you do.
And by the way, I mean, if you just do it digitally, you can really reduce the cost down.
Right.
And I got to tell you, many times when I've met with donors or prospects and we give them a proposal or something, and a week later they'll ask, can you email that to me so they can share it?
Right.
I think, you know, you can really cut your cost by just doing a digital format.
Yeah. And, you know, the case for support it depends upon what you're doing. If it's just a document like this, and I'm going out to meet with someone, I'm going to just hand it to them.
Yeah.
If it's someone I want to actually, you know, receive it, maybe I have 100 donors that I determined I want them to physically get a copy that they can open up and look at.
Yeah.
Or there may be another group that you're going to send it to digitally. So I think it just really depends. You have to know your own donors, your own prospects, what their interests are. But to me, if I'm going to go meet with someone, I'm going to hand it to them. I want to comment that your case for support is a great tool for recruiting board members.
Repeat that. I think I hadn't thought of it. Dig a little deeper in that.
Well, it's a great tool for recruiting board members. When I worked for an organization and I was part of the recruitment team, And when we went out and we met with a prospective board member, we could hand them this document. And I said, let me just summarize it for you. When you read through this, it's going to tell you our history and about all the programs and services that we deliver and what our vision is and how important that is to the organization. I talk a little bit about it, and this is what it's going to cost. They see how organized you are. They see that you really have spent time and effort and that they could be a part of this. That I've never handed this to someone I was recruiting for a board that they didn't say yes to coming on the board.
Hey, wow.
And becoming a donor.
Hey, I'm going to add a caveat. When you take your case for support for a meeting with donor, don't read the case support to them. You should speak passionately from the heart. And the case for support, you're going to leave them at some point, maybe after 30, 40 minutes. And the case for support is going to speak for your nonprofit when you're no longer there.
Right. Yeah.
I think, hey, Diana, we just got a question. Can a case for support be a video? Are you seeing any of that?
It could be. Whoever does it needs to, again, we're talking about keep it short. I find that even when I watch something on YouTube, if it doesn't catch my interest, I start looking at the time thing to see when it's going to be over,
Yeah.
And so you've got to, you have less time, I think, when you're doing it online. I mean, doing it as a video, but yes, you can do that. No reason not to.
It's going to cost you something.
I think sometimes you could just do it simply in your office.
Yeah, do it with your computer or with your smartphone.
Right.
We've talked about what you should do. What do you talk about what you shouldn't do? I call this no-nos. What should you do?
Honestly, I know. This is the one thing that drives me crazy. People write a case for support and they use the words we.
Yeah.
Us.
It's the royal we.
Yeah. And it's when you say, well, we did this. Well, we didn't do anything. XYZ organization delivered these services. You didn't deliver anything. And so it's you don't write it from that perspective. It's about the organization. There is no we, there is no us in doing that. It's one of the things that, quite honestly, I'm trying to be better at, and I catch myself. But if you are when you are writing, I'm not going to say if, when you write your case for support, be very careful not to use you and we.
What should you use instead?
The organization's name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And
Or you can say the staff of XYZ organization,
Yeah.
but it's about the organization.
Hey, can case for supports be tested with donors? How so?
Okay. The first time somebody said I should test my case for support, I thought I was going to have my own heart attack. And I said, okay, I'll try this because I was scared to death. And so what I did is I selected 5 donors. A couple of them were, I think 1 or 2 of them were board members, but they were all donors. And I selected 5 people out in the community. And I'm doing this to people, not to corporations or foundations.
Yeah.
This was people. And so I picked 5 people that we wanted to have as donors. They were on our prospect list, but they had not given. And I sent them, that's a really small sample, but I sent them all the case for support. And I explained what it was and the value of it. And I told them I would call them in a couple of days and ask their feelings about it. Did they feel like it made us a worthy organization to give to? And before I could get all of my calls done, I received 2 checks in the mail from people who said, love what you did, want to support it.
Wow, that's affirmation to me. That's a good case for support.
And others said, you know, I like it. You're really not the kind of organization that we support, but I really understand what you're doing in the community. Because not everybody you're going to reach out to wants to support your organization or your mission. And so, but that was the first time I had tested it, and I really was glad I did. I learned a lot from doing that.
Hey, should case for supports differ by the size of the organization or the sector? Does the super big nonprofits, should they follow different organizational guidelines?
And I will probably, it was either Yale or Brown, and I apologize, I don't remember which university, wrote a 1-page case for support. If any of you are bigger than Yale, go for it. But no, absolutely not. It's about being a succinct
And they
writer.
sure raise a lot of money.
Yes, they do. So you could, like I said, you could write a 1-page case for support. You just have to get those words down very meaningfully.
What was I going to say? We're wrapping up here. Any final questions from the audience? We got 5 minutes left. If not, while you're thinking about it, okay, Diana, how can you tell you have a very strong case for support, and how can you tell you have a weak one?
Oh gosh. I think that by testing it, having other people read it, those are about the only ways to see if it resonates with somebody else.
Yeah, certainly the one that got unsolicited gifts, that was affirmation, things like that. And your board is going to sign off, so it shouldn't be like you're going alone off the cliff with this one.
Right. Well, and I think that, you know, your executive director or your executive team on your staff, you know, because you want all of them to read it as well, is they're going to let you know. And I also think sometimes professional colleagues, you know, having somebody else who's in the nonprofit fundraising field read it and get their feedback.
Diana, you've done such a great job. Can we put her, John, can you put her address on the screen, her email address? This is now the deal, because it's National Nonprofit Day. Graciously, Diana is accepting the first 10 attendees who email their case for support. She will, at no cost to you, review and edit them and return them. It's going to be in the Word format. Can we amplify on that, Diana?
Yes, please.
Okay, and there you see, that's her email address. And also we're going to put it, now what we're going to do, we have a LinkedIn summary with the major points that we have covered. And then John's going to do a magic spin drive, and we plan to post we're going to send the tape to everybody who registered, and we're going to put it on LinkedIn and Facebook. So we'll do that sometime. John, maybe the promise we'll get that done before noontime tomorrow. Diana, she's already done this twice for me. Good things come in free. I mean, I just love partnering with you. So when you do such a good job, you're going to be asked again.
My pleasure, always.
Thank you for enriching our learning community audience. You've heard from the Picasso of the case for support, and she will review the first 10 case for supports in Microsoft Word format, email to that address, and she will have no cost to you, review and edit it. Let me thank our learning community and the job you do every day. Diana, the time just flew by. And once again, thank you for being the Picasso place for support in sharing, your painting style with everyone.
Thank you. Jim, you're very kind. I appreciate it.
Okay, and thank you to our learning community, and thank you. It's National Nonprofit Today. So to the professional and volunteer nonprofit leaders, thank you for the good work you do this day and every other day to touch, improve, and save more lives. And we'll be back in 2 Wednesdays and talk about fundraising in a bear market. Diana, give my regards to all the Hoyts, and it was a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Okay, and so we'll say good night.
Bye.